Good morning. I'd like to call this special meeting of the Facilities Committee to order. Today is Friday, October 25th. It's 8 a.m. The first item on our agenda is to review the meeting schedule for 24-25.
Mr. Chairman, to date, most of the committees have kind of either just kept the cadence of the meetings and scheduled or otherwise as I've moved forward. That's been the sort of practice thus far, but those are the meetings. They aren't technically posted, so we don't have to technically cancel them as they come around. But if we have to reschedule, we can do that. But
Okay.
anyway, those are the scheduled meeting times.
Any comments, questions? Okay. Next is the facility master study of the high school, Middlesex and Tokenique.
Good morning. So as we know, with Oxbridge being new and HHR well underway, we have 3 schools that are being discussed as the next focus for a facility master study. The last study is well over 11 years old at this point, and it is a 10-year study. These schools were either built or renovated within the last 15 years, and they're starting to show their age. So it is our recommendation to conduct another in-depth comprehensive master study of the 3 schools as to be used as a roadmap for what should be done going forward.
Kevin, can you tell us what, if we don't do this survey, what happens, I guess?
Sure. So what happens is we would continue to come to you with capital projects to address the needs of the buildings. However, in several discussions, we've talked about larger scale renovations. Anything that would be going through the state of Connecticut for reimbursement, you would need this study done first in order to achieve that ability.
Okay.
Does that answer the question? Or you want me to?
I think, and I think more of it, so for me, it's, I think you understand the lifespan of certain elements and you understand when those are done. Would this study point out other things for you with that as well, or?
Correct. And just to go back real quick, we know the life cycle of certain components in the building, but it's within a degree of certainty. A chiller is recommended to last 20 to 25 years with proper care and maintenance. That doesn't mean it won't go bad after 18 or 19. So at any moment, we could lose one of these large components and then we're kind of stuck. We've done a very good job of keeping everything alive and functioning and working, but they are starting to give us more and more problems each year. The study would also bring in other factors, as the memo indicates, a culinary program or a revised usage of, the libraries reimagined or things of that nature, even the cafeterias that we've been discussing recently for sustainability. So it would really be a overall look at those 3 schools.
Okay. Other questions? Julie?
Thanks, Kevin. So on the list in your memo, it mentions that the buildings would be looked at from the perspective of teaching and learning and operations and systems. And just to confirm, it doesn't say safety and security. And I assume that that means because our buildings are safe and secure because we make sure of that despite their
Sure.
advanced age.
Yes, and the safety and security component we've been bringing to the board for project approval as we've been going along, but it would take an in-depth look at all systems.
Okay. And then just, is there a general rule of thumb or best practice? Like 25 years since Middlesex was renovated sounds like a long time. Is that a long time in the life of a school building?
Yes and no. Roofs are standard 30-year roofs, but in New England, 30-year roofs don't last 30 years. We're coming in on 25 years and we've noticed significant water infiltration, wind deterioration, things like that are starting to age them quicker than we would like.
Just to follow up on that, what was the original built date of middle school?
Okay, so the original build date of the old middle school that faces Hollow Tree, I want to say was 1937. And then it had been expanded and added upon several times, with the most recent addition being in the late 90s.
Okay, so that complicates that building further, right?
Yes, it
It's not
does.
just that we're looking at 25 years, we're looking at 25 years on top of other,
Almost 100 years.
yeah, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The other thing about the middle school is, that's been discussed off and on as a factor, is the actual schedule, and the actual number of classrooms in there. Is also also restricts the kids' schedule and the staff schedule and our ability to maximize it. There was a wee footprint that was tentatively laid out to put on an addition in the past, but anyway, so the extra space there would be something that has always been like on a table as being a significant need.
Do
Right.
we have an idea of sort of like what the intended capacity was of the middle school and where we're at now?
I wouldn't know that off the top of my head, but I
Okay.
have talked to Rusty Schreiner. He was one of the
Yes.
co-chairs at Ox Ridge, and he actually helped renovate the middle school in the late 90s. And we've had a number of chats about what they had done at that time to make the middle school more expandable, if you will. Some of the infrastructure was already stubbed out in the, what would that be, southeast corner of the building, where piping and other mechanical systems are almost ready to go for a future addition.
Right. No, I remember him bringing that up at ORBC a few times. I guess I was kind of thinking more about like the student capacity, with like how many we have in our enrollment projections, but all of those considerations would be taken into account with this facility study,
that's
right?
the
Like
whole
that's like
purpose of
a
them, yeah.
piece, yeah, okay.
Other questions? Dave, any questions? I can't see you, so.
All good, Dennis. Thank you for asking.
So your recommendation is, so this will be coming through in the budget process for 25, correct?
Yes.
Dennis, does your committee want to recommend that this move forward?
I think so. Do you guys want to? Okay, so I think that will be a recommendation for us to move forward.
Agreed.
Thank you, Joe. Next on our agenda is the sustainability discussion for kitchens and cafeterias.
Sure. So the initiative started with the construction of Ox Ridge. So Ox Ridge was built to have a sustainable kitchen. And then in the current school year, we did expand that to Tokenique. And so right now we have 2 of 7 schools who have sustainable kitchens, which essentially means that they have industrial dishwashers within the kitchen. They have, instead of, throwaway styrofoam plates or things you might see, washable plates for the students. If we were to expand it, there's a couple things that have to be considered. At Royal and Holmes, there's not enough staff provided by Chartwell's at the school to manage a sustainability model for the kitchen. So they would have to add a dishwasher, not just the actual machinery, but a person at those locations, which would mean an increased administrative cost from Chartwell's because they would have to obviously pay that employee. And then at Hinley, it's a little more complicated, and Kevin can speak to it a little bit, but the space itself is not designed to have that infrastructure in place. There is no wall space within it. The kitchen part of the cafeteria is leveled, so there's different levels within it. So if you were to do that, we would have to have an architect come in. We would have to design a whole renovation of the actual kitchen area, and that would be a capital project. So that would be a little bit longer. In order to do this, considering that the food service fund subsidizes the board's budget and that there would have to be additional staff in place at the other schools, we would likely have to have a price increase associated with student meals. So if we were to do that, it would likely, the board would have to vote to increase prices, and you would probably phase it in so that either Royal or Holmes would be next on the agenda. And then the following year, whichever school we didn't do would be the next. We would have to have an architectural study done at Hinley to look at what it would take to actually renovate that kitchen area. And then that would become a capital project for the town to renovate that. And then going over to the high school and the middle school, as we just talked about, a facility study would largely depend on what you end up doing with that building. If you're going to create a brand new middle school, One would think that would just be incorporated within the project of the middle school. If you're going to decide to renovate as new, it could potentially be incorporated into that. If you decide to do nothing with the middle school, but just do things like roofs and ACs, we'd follow the similar model with like Holmes and Royal, where we'd have to add an additional staff member, and then you do that renovation as is. And then the high school, again, you're gonna have a facility study. Are you gonna do anything with that kitchen area? You wouldn't want to do that work now, because if you do that work now and maybe something changes, same with the middle school, you could end up ripping that all out and having to do it all over again. So the high school and the middle school, if we were to expand to all 7 schools, really should be the last 2 to be looked at, just because of that facility study. And then Hinley obviously is the more complicated one, as we mentioned.
Any other comments, Kevin, or?
No, I think she did a great job summarizing.
Okay. Questions? Katie?
Thank you. Kevin or Rich, I was interested in seeing if we could add some current costs incurred to this breakdown. For example, what we're paying to purchase the disposable trays, utensils, maybe even an acknowledgement of sort of the space that they take up. I remember that was part of Oxbridge, right? Was talking about, well, currently there's storage space of where we purchase the disposables and store them versus where we could put the trays. I also believe that the trash fees are by weight, and I'm curious if we expect there to be an impact
So
on.
not here.
Okay.
So when you go to like the dump, there are like trash fees, like tipping fees. So at the schools, it works more similar to how like your home is. So like you pay by the garbage can at your house, you're paying by the dumpster essentially here. And so there hasn't been any reduction in dumpsters.
You don't expect that, like
no.
even from?
Yeah,
no?
no.
Okay.
We're always going to have garbage, whether it's from the kitchen or from the classrooms or the offices, whatever it might be. So we haven't experienced, and we wouldn't expect to see a decrease in garbage. The cost of like the actual trays that we bought and the dishwasher for Tokenique was about $85,000. We can get a price on what we've been spending
Oh,
prior for like the
yes,
disposable
okay,
ones. Yeah.
great. Yes, perfect. Thank you. And then also just curious in terms of the financial components, if there might be state grants that could be explored from sustainability initiatives.
So we're not on the National School Lunch Program, so we haven't qualified for any state grants. Typically for things that involve like the cafeteria or kitchen operations for state grants, you'd have to be on the national school.
Okay, and so we wouldn't expect that even from things that were more sort of sustainability or like.
Not unless it was like a
green-minded.
private foundation or something like
Okay.
that, but if it was through like the state of Connecticut, we would qualify.
Okay, it might be worth touching base too with some of our town partners. I know that there's an advisory committee on sustainability that works with the selectman's office, and I do think that, you know, we've seen some great progress in town regarding sustainability. There's a townwide composting program now, and, you know, always nice to make this a bigger effort where we can.
Julie?
Thank you. Perfect segue for my question. I just wanted to talk a little more about what the benefits are of the sustainable kitchen. How common is it for schools to have kitchens operating like this? Is it a pretty common practice in districts around here or in the state?
My experience is no. Typically it's
Yeah.
disposables.
Okay, which feels to me like an opportunity for us to make a little hay out of what we're doing and what we're looking into, which also makes it a little more palatable to families to think about maybe having a slightly increased price for their meals in the future if they have a better appreciation for what this is doing, what it's giving in return. So I think we should think about that. I mean, this sounds to me like a great article in the Darien Times, if not bigger than that, as far as what our sustainable kitchens are capable of and what we're looking into for the future. Let's not miss opportunities for good PR.
Katie?
Thank you. I did just want to comment on the, you know, sort of like the standard. When I was meeting with the kitchen consultant that SLAM brought in for Oxbridge about making those plans, they did say that the standard for new construction is to build sustainable kitchens and that they are putting in dishwashers. So I think it would be great to keep up with that. But absolutely, I think that's where everyone is headed. Yeah.
So do we know, So you mentioned that we haven't decreased our trash and so how many, to me, the question then is how many students are bringing lunch in versus purchasing? Do we know that percentage roughly or?
So we would be able to find out how many lunches were sold. And then, take an estimate of deducting, how many kids you have in the building. So we probably would be able to do that. I would say Oxbridge and Tokenique at the elementary schools definitely have the highest percentage of students who buy. We just see that typically in the sales that we have. But we could probably get that.
And then I lost my thought. So if to go to the sustainable kitchen, then I would assume that requires an outlay of purchasing silverware and plates and
Correct.
dishes and so on and so forth.
Correct. So if we were to do the model that we have here, we would probably recommend doing Royal first. We would probably take a drawdown on the fund balance within the cafeteria account. That's the same thing that we did with Tokenique this current year. The board, we discussed it at finance committee. The board was relatively receptive of it. And so we drew down funds in that cafeteria account. We could probably do that with Royal at Homes. After you get to that point, it's probably going to become a capital outlay that you'd have to put in your capital budget request.
And then to Katie's point of storage, is there any difference in storage between disposable and sustainable? Or is that
So-
roughly the same?
I would think they're approximately the same. The sustainable has different ways to handle the storage, but it's not those very large deliveries of paper products that we're accustomed to.
Okay. Other questions?
Just if we're gonna move this to the board, which seems like we're going that direction, just curious to know, Rich, full costing, what we're looking at for numbers if we go down this road, and also if there's any sort of earn back versus what we'd have to put out now for the capital versus savings we would have going down this model. If you could kind of figure out what that timeline would look like, that'd be helpful.
Sure. I mean, just generally with the exception of Hinley, because we don't know what it would cost because of the renovation, you're probably looking at about $420,000 of expenses across the other schools. I'm not quite sure there would necessarily be a payback, but we could see how much we would not spend on like the paper products, but it'd likely be a while before you'd have a payback.
Yeah, if you get a sort of estimate of that, that'd be helpful. Appreciate it.
Julie? No. Jill?
To capture the conversation that was had here today, so to the memo, you're gonna add what somebody just asked about on the disposable costing. But I would also recommend adding an approximate timeline. You don't have to have years filled in, but an approximate timeline of if we were to roll this out, what would that look like and how would that impact the reserve account that we keep? It's not, that reserve account's not the right language, but so the board can fully understand what it would cost and when.
Julie?
Thank you. If there is any way to also add in a little more as to what the benefits are of this, as far as being, good global citizens, I think we could use a little of that language in here to help people understand that.
So I guess the question for me is, I think to that point, so with trash in the state of Connecticut, or at least in this area, nothing goes to a landfill. It just goes to an incinerator. So I assume all our stuff is combustible and other than well, I guess to try to determine what the sustainability savings are versus not. I don't know if that's too much in detail or not. Katie?
I would say that this is actually where we could really benefit from partnering with some of our town partners. For example, one of the reasons that the town put in the composting program was because of exactly what you said, that trash in Darien is burned. And as we all know, dry things are much more combustible than wet, and food is very wet. So by removing the food waste from our trash, the burning is much more efficient. So that was like a big piece of it. So when you think about, the waste that's removed, the food waste and the composting, I think that's the same. Sorry, I'm haven't had enough coffee. So I think that there are probably levels to this, right? What we're talking about right now are moving from disposable to reusable trays, dishwashers, right? A next level of that might be are the schools interested in joining the town's composting thing, right? To better to make the trash more efficient. So I think that some of those things, I wouldn't expect, these guys to be able to have ready at the top of their fingertips. But I think that we probably do have some town partners that would be really thrilled to get involved and be able to help us contextualize carbon emissions and those kinds of things.
Yeah, my point is because I agree with Julie on the point that this is a great publicity is the wrong word, but PR and acknowledgement of moving forward. And I think we just need to make sure we have a story to tell versus just, we're sustainable and trying to understand what that means truly versus just checking a box and saying we do this. So. Alan?
Yeah, I just want to make sure, like, if I recommend it, I'd like to go to the board forgive the term, for what purpose, right? So are we looking at potentially considering a phased implementation, therefore considering that in budget considerations? I'm just asking myself even, like, just what are we bringing other than bringing this memo and the updated part of it? And I do think there's a wee bit of a cost, a price for doing business in this area, which I think you can also see as a good thing to do for modeling for our kids and ourselves. But that being said, I just process wise, like, we're bringing it to say, here's a possible phase in. We've got this other facility study going on. Is the thought potentially to consider the board to consider whether you want to go forward with, like, maybe one or two of the schools, or maybe I should have the answer to that, but I'm just sort of like talking out, like, how you want that to be presented, how we might present it.
I think it's a great question, and again, maybe in looking through this, Kevin recommended the high school and the middle school, maybe we pause for now until we do the facility study. Henley, we don't know, and so we're not sure on that. And then the question is it feasible to do something at Royal and Holmes? And I would throw that back to you guys, and with the 3 building projects we have ongoing, do we, especially at those 2 schools, do we have the capacity to handle putting in renovating kitchens as well?
As part of that HHR project,
No,
oh,
and
okay,
as an addition to those projects.
similar to what we did at Tokenique, for example.
Yes. So, Kate.
So I agree with what Dennis is saying, and I appreciate the way that Rich and Kevin have laid this out. I'm a huge supporter of this, and I would love to do it all tomorrow. That being said, I think that the way that they laid it out makes sense.
Okay.
And so I guess the way I'd like to see it is maybe if this committee was in agreement, that we might recommend to the board that we start thinking about this being something that the board wants to adopt, thinks is important, and in working with our facilities department, determining the correct phasing and timeline we're making this a project that we think is worthwhile, recognizing that it's not happening overnight, that certain schools have more challenges, but that we'll keep it kind of on our goal list.
I would agree. I was just going to add, if not now, to Dennis's question, just, an idea of when you think that it could be done.
Right. So in thinking about the HHR project, while there is no kitchen renovation per se as part of the scope, Royal, for example, has a cafeteria that will receive new mechanicals, new lights, new ceiling. So my recommendation would be to let that project run its course, because otherwise we're going to have overlapping trades and conflict. It'll be quite difficult to get in there and do the work in a short time frame.
Okay. Great. Dave, any comments or questions with this?
Nope, all good, Dennis. Thank you.
Dennis, do you guys want to review this again and come back with a recommended timeline to the board versus just an updated memo? It sounds
I
to me
think-
like you need to kick the timeline a little bit.
I think with the additional specifications we've asked for, and so a little more color to this, and then we can review that in our next meeting and then bring it to the board after that. All in agreement? Okay, perfect.
So just be clear, potentially there's a scenario where phase one of this might be rolled into the budget scenario potentially.
Maybe at one school, maybe.
Yeah, right. I'm just trying to,
But also, Kevin, or Rich, didn't, you say that the first and second schools could be paid on a drawdown from the,
So for the infrastructure, yes, but the board would have to agree to
Yeah.
raise prices to cover the operating costs.
oh,
So-
even for the first school, that
Or even for
wasn't
the
just,
first-
okay, got
yeah.
it.
So if the board wants to move forward, whether it's Holmes or Royal, for example, either next year or the year after, at some point, the board would have to vote to adopt a price increase.
Okay,
just kind of had
yes,
ties.
understood. Thank you for clarifying
And,
that.
and just to clarify, price increases across the district, not at each individual school, just to be clear. Thank you. Okay, our next top agenda item is follow-up discussion on the proposed 26 capital projects. Kevin.
All right, so, sorry. Tuesday, we did a crash course on the capital projects, and if you'd like, I can go line by line or give a more in-depth discussion on each, whatever you prefer.
So I think we'll open it up to questions. Do we have, so I actually have my first question is cafeteria green roof. So cafeteria green roof was started since I've been on the board, I believe, so less than 7 years ago. So what are we looking to do there? And then what is our timeline on that and so on and so forth?
Sure. Green roofs are not dissimilar from asphalt or shingle roofs. They need maintenance and they need proper care. That's something that I don't believe has been done at this area. And each time we have a significant rain event, we take water into the cafeteria hallway below. So we had quite a bit of success last year fixing a foundation leak that was affecting the library for many, many years. So I suspect it's a very similar situation where something wasn't flashed or sealed properly. So there is some exploration that needs to take place to figure out where that water's coming from to get it corrected.
Okay. And then my another question for me is resurfacing the driveways. So I have a couple of questions on this. First is, where does the high school end and where does the town begin? Something like, for me, Nutmeg, at the end there, it's really beginning to get torn up, but I don't know, do we go to the speed bump and the rest is the town? And I forget which part is torn up on our side or the town side, so.
So I have similar questions. I've always been told that inside the speed bumps is ours and outside is not, but then I've come to learn that the loop, the oval loop itself going from High School Lane to Nutmeg is a town road. So there is some discussion that needs to take place to delineate that. But the ask for this year is for the wings, if you will, going towards the athletic wing and the football field to get those milled and paved this summer.
Okay. So then my question is why those areas versus the other areas which are beginning to get, A, get more usage and B, are getting torn up.
So one is the slope. The oval is pitched quite well, so it doesn't necessarily take the impact as the two flatter areas. The bigger issue is summer school. We have a very small window in which to do any sort of exterior work. It would have to be phased just because of school buses have to come in and drop off the summer school students. So it would be tricky for sure.
Okay. Other questions? Katie?
Thank you. I had a question about one of the items on central office. The front entrance modification. Can you just walk us through that a little bit?
Sure. So that's a security initiative that Leon and I had discussed. Essentially, we're trying to streamline the security measures around the district. Protocols are that the person should be able to go into a vestibule and stay there until they're vetted properly, securely. That would be the modification we're looking to do there.
So currently there is a vestibule. It's more weather related, I believe, right?
Right.
So would that remain as existing, and instead of coming in both sets of those sliding doors and then getting buzzed in, it would be you come in one and get buzzed in at that point?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so we're not actually changing the actual like structure and entrance. It's more just about like where the access point is, how far you
Yeah,
can
it's more of
come
a
in?
programming component where one door would open, but the other wouldn't.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
right
it's-
now.
okay, so basically just, the person sitting in here would have to buzz you from
Right.
there. Okay.
Correct.
So that would involve, a different locking mechanism and then also a camera mechanism to
That's
be
right.
able.
That's right. There's a desktop station similar to what we have at Oxbridge where you have to be buzzed in the first door, you go to the security booth, you're vetted and you either go to the main office or you come into the boardroom, for example.
And then would there be a component added as well, an identification component?
Yeah, I
Or,
believe that's part of that process of getting the person into the building, yes.
so they would still have to come all the way in to the desk over there for identification, right?
Yes.
But you wouldn't be moving the location of the front desk.
Correct.
Do you have an estimate on that cost?
25,000.
25,000? Thank you.
So there has been at least one incident where someone, now, it's a combination of, because right now you can't just theoretically just can't walk in. So when I say what I'm going to say, you can say, well, sure, shouldn't be locked anyway. Okay, that's fine, right? But there's been at least one incident, if not two, right, of angry people actually got to my floor before, I'm not talking about my safety here, I'm just talking about that's the extent of what, like all of a sudden it's like somebody angry, like having a scenario and they shouldn't even get past the front door. So I only give that as an example of between culture and practices and actually infrastructure working together, it reaffirms certain things can or cannot happen. And the people in this building too also, I think it's fair to say, want to feel the same level of security and stuff as the schools do.
Everyone deserves to be safe.
Yeah.
Julie.
Thank you. Would that work if there's not someone at the front desk? Can that roll over to somebody who's not sitting at the front Vicky's desk?
This would give us some redundancy as well. It would
Okay.
allow for more than just one person
To
to.
be, okay, great. And then forgive me, I probably should have asked this earlier in our discussion today, but would we or should we include central office in a master facilities plan? Maybe,
Well, we have down below.
I know, that's what I'm thinking of,
As a
that
whole,
basement.
we have this area, what we discussed before. If you're going to, if we are going to look at this, it probably, if we want to incorporate a lot of this, I would say, since you asked, I would say yes.
I mean, it seems like it's worth at least considering it in the scope of what we're looking at and discussing it, because we have resources here. We also have unused, or maybe unoptimized space. We might want to add that.
I think it's a very good point. And with that, so another question for me is window replacement. So I thought we've done windows and excuse me for my ignorance, but I don't know what the first floor is because
Right.
it's geared, so is first floor the basement or is first floor this part or?
So this is the first floor.
Okay.
And then downstairs is the basement. And if you look at the bottom right photo, I believe it was 2 years ago, we had replaced basement windows that are along that accessible ramp. They were bringing in water. There was some brick flashing that needed to be done. And the boardroom windows here were also being considered last year. Additionally, the bay window at the top right photo, that's in the finance office. Right behind us, that is taking in water as well. So there's been some repairs done to it, but would like to really take it apart and replace it.
Okay. Anything else? Okay,
I had a question on Tokenique.
I'm sorry. Yes, please.
Yeah, just Tokenique, if I could skip over. There was a note that there was a tripping hazard with the rate there. I'm just trying to understand how dangerous is that? Is that something that needs to be moved up for a safety perspective? Is cone sufficient in the short term? Do we need any sort of like structure or ramp or some of that like plastic stuff you run cabling through over it for the short term? Could you speak to that a little bit for us, Jeff?
Sure. So we've been working with Ryan Betts, the principal, communicating with everybody. The tripping hazard isn't so significant that it's a danger, but the drain itself is not actually draining. The slope from the settling of the concrete slabs has started to separate where the water isn't going in the right direction, if you will. So as part of the paving, we wanted to try and tie this repair in as well.
I guess my question is, I appreciate doing it as part of the paving, but it would seem to me that there's not tripping hazards out in the parking lot, or are there? Or is this something that because of potential safety concerns should be considered separate and above the paving?
So I agree. I don't think there are tripping hazards out in the parking lot per se. And if you would like to consider it separate or to be done sooner, we could have that discussion. Just the dollar amount that we had gotten would trigger a capital request because of the work involved.
Yeah, I guess personally, I'd like to have the conversation now. If we could talk a little bit, what the scope would be.
Right. So essentially, we have to cut out, I want to say it was 12 concrete pads, the whole width of the entrance, and then 2 adjacent pads in order to get in there, replace the drain completely, tie it into the existing water line, and then obviously re-pour all the concrete.
And any idea on timeline? Is that something that could be done over a break, or is that something that would have to be done over the summer?
Right. So the trick with concrete is you can't pour it if the temperatures are going to be below, say, 45, 50 degrees. And obviously it's really nice right now. So it would have been nice to get it done in the fall, but I can't guarantee that the temperatures outside will sustain. Potentially a spring break project, it could be targeted, sure.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And
I'm happy for us to sort of like, forgive the pun, take a wee trip over there again and just reassess, like, because if it's urgent, it's urgent. If it's not, it can be deferred. Okay, thanks.
and this will all be on our tour in December.
December 7th.
Yes.
Just wanted to say thank you for the photos. That really helps to contextualize for the media. So that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. Next item is public comment.
Good morning. If anybody in person or online would like to participate in public comment, please approach the podium or use the raised hand icon and wait to be recognized. Once recognized, please state your name and address for the record, and you will have up to 3 minutes to comment. Please note the time with the chair. We have no raised hands at this time.